Okay, cool. Welcome to the first episode of the podcast. This has been a long time in the making. So I'm really happy to finally get down and start this with my good mate, Claire Eastham, who is in the UK right now. You're well known in the UK. You've been on breakfast television, you've been on TV shows, you're published, you're in the press. But what about for people who don't know you? Could you just give like a little bit more background about yourself and your journey with social anxiety?
Sure, you mean like as in my upbringing, school, that kind of thing?
Yeah, maybe, and how your social anxiety kind of developed and how it was for you.
Yeah. I mean, I've studied a lot about attachment theory, as I know you have, and one
Mm,
of there's a lot of things there, but one of the discrepancies was it happens. I think it's like under the age of 8, where actually my biggest significant traumas happened in school. My social anxiety was uh, it wasn't born in secondary school, but it was certainly kicked into adulthood very quickly. It grew into a monster in secondary school.
yeah.
I went from feeling pretty sure who I was to I went to a school like it's bizarre, isn't it? I can feel it in my body, even though I've overcome it, even though I'm an expert in the field now, I can still feel fear when I think about that school because my body
Yeah.
remembers it was you suddenly go from quite a small school to a big one, and it's really serious. And I always liken it to prison because you've all got to wear the uniform. You've got to get into a gang really quickly to survive.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I like it.
Uh,
Yeah.
and the teachers in my school weren't as bothered about education as they were keeping the kids quiet. They didn't care. So I wasn't bullied, I was very lucky in that sense, but there was a lot of violence, like boys, I remember. Because I wasn't conventionally beautiful, I wasn't blonde, I didn't have big tits or like tan, even for a child, you
Yeah.
were targeted. So I remember like someone throwing this one lad in class would throw books at the back of my head.
Right.
And
Jesus.
and the teacher didn't do anything. Or I remember the teaching style didn't suit me, calling on me in class, like Claire. I'm like, you could ask me to repeat my name, and I wouldn't be able to tell
Yeah.
you if you called on me like that. And I developed a really bad blushing problem. Like,
Mm,
all it took was eye contact, or if someone said my
mm.
name, forget it. And I would go the color of an angry tomato. It was awful. And then I wasn't even bothered about being called on in class anymore. I was bothered about blushing, which is the cycle.
Yeah.
And it, I I used to sit in class. I remember looking at the clock. I think this is why I do this as an adult. I time things. I look at how long I've got to last in a situation, and I will watch that clock because that's what I
Wow.
used to do in class. And I'd be like, I don't know
When can
how.
I get out? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like a eighth grade student as well. I went all the way in school, so I don't know how I managed to take in any information, but doing that, but I did, and then and I had friends. It wasn't as if I was alone, but they had no idea. And I had this huge fear of being kicked out of my friendship group if I made a mistake. So I became a huge people pleaser. I let people
Right.
treat me in ways that I would not allow now as a child. And
Mm.
anytime I tried to articulate it to an authority, like a teacher or an adult, it was very quickly shut down as you're shy, you're very dramatic, Claire, you're very sensitive.
Yeah, I
And
hated that. Yeah.
I just thought, you don't understand. I'm going through life constantly analyzing people to try and work out if they're going to hurt me, not, if they're going to say something mean. Do they hate me? What do they think? How can I make sure they're on side? Analyzing body language. It's absolutely exhausting for a
It's
kid
so
as
draining. Yeah.
going through puberty, and exams. You think
Mm,
it was it really was what I now call like it was trauma. It was traumatizing to me in secondary school, and
mm.
it it created something that took me a long time to work with and understand, and that was the start of it, really.
Yeah. And it robs you of a lot of potential, doesn't it? Because all that energy that could go, I used to look at other kids and they'd just be like, they would be doing stuff and their mind would be on it. But when you've got social anxiety, you're doing stuff, but you're never doing what you're supposedly doing. Your mind is always elsewhere, trying to read the room or judge this or waiting for that person to leave because you think that they have an agenda against you and you can feel them
Yeah,
looking at you. Or all this, you're doing so many things with your brain rather than the thing that you're meant to be doing. So you underachieve in some ways, even though we both did very well in school, didn't we? Which is also probably tied into the whole disorder as well
Perfectionism.
in some ways. Yeah, perfectionism and people pleasing. And, I was a little perfectionist and had to be. So then I was bullied as well at school because I was the top academic boy through high school and I was the captain of the rugby team. So I was like, I was trying to be Mr. Perfect. And of course that I went to a rough comprehensive school with, a lot of lads that were smoking a lot of pot and that kind of stuff. And when you're Mr. Golden Bollocks, that attracts a lot of negative attention from people. And that's, that was a whole thing for me as well. But secondary school didn't go so well, yeah, at the beginning for sure.
Now, even as an expert, even as someone who has conquered social anxiety, can now help and lead others to do the same, do you still notice that old programming trying to come back? And what do you do about it? Like,
what I notice is what is really fascinating to me is I think social anxiety is a whole mode of thinking in the brain. And if I isolate and focus too much on a writing project or whatever it might be, if I really lock in for something for a long time, don't go out and socialize and do all the stuff that I know that I need to do for my own well-being, I can notice elements of that mode of thinking coming back. So, for example, the apartment building that I live in now, there's a receptionist. And there was a while back when I was really pushing myself. I was drinking a lot of coffee to focus. I was chewing nicotine gum to get extra focus. And I was like really amped up. And then when I'd go out to the gym and stuff, I sort of said goodbye and then she wasn't very receptive. And then I started to that mode of thinking of like, oh, is that receptionist not really responding to me how I want her to, or she doesn't seem as friendly? And I caught that mode of thinking. I was like, that is what happens to your brain with social anxiety. And I think it's if you have enough poor sleep or not enough sleep, or you have enough stimulants and you don't socialize, and and you do all the things that are not good for your well-being, that mode of thinking can start to kick back. But it was fascinating for me to see, that's a whole specific way that my brain works. And that's how my brain used to be my default mode. What does that look mean that person gave me? Are we friends? Is that okay? Did that joke please you? Am I in just going around constantly like, that guy's on about a 9 out of 10 with me. That person sort of 7 or 8 kind of likes me. That person, how do I make this person like me a bit more so I can bring the score up? That's how your fucking mind works when you got social anxiety, and that's bonkers. Like, that's so tiring.
100%. I'm laughing because it's true. You think I'm like, it's the responsibility. You take all the responsibility for an interaction when there's 2 people or 3 people or 4 people. You think, no. This is all on me. Go in there and perform. And it's a sort of jazz hands. I'm very much a therapist in the past used to say, oh, okay, Comedy Claire's walked in when I very nervous.
Right.
I'll sort of go on the front and try and make people laugh because I think start on a high.
Yeah. Give them what they want. Get the crowd going.
Woo! It's people look how fun I am. Don't look at my face. Don't look at my eyes. It's the kind of that's my value. When you think you have value, just as you are. Don't worry about it, mate. There's this pressure. It's your old programming. It's this old mode. And I love, because we had this conversation about the receptionist, and I love how quick, or you treated it as an experiment, like, I was feeling like that, and that's the old programming, and it's not, we don't accept it as reality anymore.
Yeah, and you've also got to look at what's been contributing to that, like 5 nights of not the best sleep, 1 too many coffees a day, plus, you know what I mean? You can see how your habits have a direct effect on your nervous system and what you need to do to manage and help yourself and look after yourself. And that's something that we can move on to in other episodes of like tools for people. But I used to, beforehand, I never really took any account of how much caffeine I drank or what food I ate, or how hydrated I was or whether did any exercise. I didn't even have an awareness that that could affect your mental health and how jittery you might feel on any given day,
I
which is
did,
pretty
and I
dumb.
was stubborn. I was like, oh, no, that's just a cop out. It's nothing to do with, coffee. It's me. I'm fundamentally flawed. I'm fundamentally
Mm.
broken. I'm like, it's really sort of, I'm cursed almost when I think of it now.
Yeah,
Some
I
of it
know,
when
right?
I'm like, it's funny, but then you think, no, you're knob. Like, do you know what caffeine does to the body? Like, you're not. It's not the root cause, but it's not helping you. You
Yeah,
know.
exactly. It's not you're right. Same with a lot of that stuff, right? It's not like going to switch it off if you stop drinking coffee, but it's also not that blanket. There's a lot of magical thinking, I think. When I realized, I think you asked me earlier, like, what does social anxiety mean to me? And when I look back on what I was like, it's just like my mind was a mess. Like my way of thinking, I didn't, for example, like we were talking about managing people, I would be, managing your relationships with them and thinking, how much do they like me?
Yeah.
I would be hyper analyzing everything. And then I would walk down, sort of, make a joke. And if the person just sort of grunted and looked at me, I'd be like, I've done something. That person hates me now. All that good credit I was building up with them over the last couple of weeks, I thought I was really getting them on side. And now I'm back
Yeah.
to zero. I've got to do something to like win them over. And
What's the
just
goal?
all these like,
Sorry,
I
I
guess
this
just
is
being
really
loved, isn't it? Just being
yeah.
loved, isn't it? And accepted, really. I think that's all anybody really wants. And,
That's
but
it.
having a hyper need for it when you got social anxiety. But yeah, just God, like my mental operating systems were just dog shit, like awful. Just every cognitive distortion under the sun you could imagine. And that was like a huge breakthrough. There were multiple breakthroughs. And again, this is something probably to go into in more detail, like the path of discovery. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I remember finding out I had social anxiety and almost crying with relief of like, oh my God, I feel so understood. Like that this is actually a thing. I'm so, like sort of some sort of redemption or something.
Mm.
And then that was replaced by, right, so how the hell do I get out of it? And there's nothing really online that helps. So I just kept rereading the same pages over and over again on the first sort of, well, actually I'd go all the way through Google, like first 10 pages,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, but then another major point was, I've totally forgotten what I was going to say. The first one is when you discover, first one is when you discover you've got it. Oh,
Yeah.
and then the second one is actually discovering the concept of cognitive distortions. That was a
Wow.
absolute game changer for me when 'cause I didn't realize you could change your way of thinking. I thought I'm just fucked in the head, like I'm an idiot, or
Yeah.
I'm weird, like I'm a fuck up because my brother's a drug addict, my mum's a bit nutty, my family's always been a bit of a mess. I'm just a bit of a screw up. I never realized it's like, no, you discount the positive, you're mind reading, you're
Yeah.
jumping to conclusions so badly, like
Or
really badly, assuming so much stuff.
personalizing with
Mag-
me. I personalize,
Personalizing.
take things so personally. Like I could literally, if the weather was bad and I wanted to go somewhere, I'd be like, of course, of course. It's because the world hates me. You think?
Would you literally think that though, in a way, like, oh, it's my birthday and now it started raining? Would you think like, oh, that's because I'm cursed or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, in the way that you're saying it's similar, I'm a fuck up, blah, blah, blah. It's what I was joking about earlier about me being broken or me.
Hmm.
I was convinced that I was a tragic figure who attracted bad luck. Like I was
Yeah.
really, there was something rotten about me.
Right, and I don't want to cut you off, but I think that's so important because this all comes down to the stories, doesn't it? The stories we tell.
Yeah,
And I used to tell myself so many of those kind of stories as well. Like, and I've worked with a lot of guys who have this idea of like, oh, well, I've got some sort of negative energy or bad juju. Like even one client was like, even my dog gives me bad looks. Like even she can tell
oh,
that there's some, I know I mean, that's very sad, but like you start to get into this very magical thinking way of stuff of
and it's
like, and
no,
sorry,
go on.
mate.
It's all right. No, I was gonna say, and I didn't realize it. It's comfortable. I didn't like it. I didn't like thinking like that, but I went straight to it because it was comfortable, because it's sort of the grooves, the imprint that it makes in the subconscious of well, this is how we think and this is the cycle. Something goes wrong, and rather than stop and put some distance between it of, well, maybe it's just, we can still have a good day, even though it's raining, we could do this. It's like, no, 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 no. It's because I'm cursed. I don't deserve to be happy. There's something wrong with me. You think
Yeah.
those thoughts I know very well, so I'll just curl up with them.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but I was also actually very emo as well and very self-pitying, which is something I'm really glad that I've been able to completely rewrite about myself
Yeah,
because, I would sort of be like, I deserve it and I'm a loser. I used to really identify with that kind of, Nirvana and all of that kind of. I was quite emo. I remember having like a Nike t-shirt. It was like Nike soccer. And I like scratched off the top of the O, so it said like sucker, and I was like, yeah, I'm just, it's like some, and my emo mates were like, that's really cool, man, So, but I
yeah,
think like we enjoy feeling that we deserve that sort of uncomfortable stuff as well. You can do. Do you know what I mean? I think you can
yeah.
slip into self-pity with social anxiety.
It's an identity, isn't it? I really thought I was going to be like Sylvia Plath. Maybe not with the head in the oven, but sort of like it's just my lot in life to be alone
Mm.
and be miserable and like separate from
Yeah.
the world when you think, and I'm okay with that. It's fine. People don't understand me. And you're like, no, 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 no. I desperately want to be understood and loved. But I'm terrified. I don't know what to do. And I'm afraid that if I try, I'll be rejected.
Right. Right. And I feel like life is actually a lot more scientific than, we create a lot of romantic narratives around this stuff. Like I'm a tragic figure or, woe is me, all my, my family are like this, so I deserve it. Whatever it is, whatever your story is, the fact is, if you join enough hobby groups, you're probably going to start enough relationships with people to have a friend group. If you go out and speak to enough people, some of those people are going to respond to you in the way that you want it. It's like
Yeah,
you've got to
statistics.
be yes, you've got to be scientific and rational and pragmatic about this stuff. And I've spoken and worked with a lot of people who are like, well, I'm just stuck in this rut. I deserve it. People always respond to me, and I'll be like, okay, how much of a concerted effort have you made in the last 6 months to join groups or meet people? And they're like, well, I don't go out. I'm like, yeah, people can't just knock on your door and say, let's be friends. And that's what I didn't understand either. I was like, why is the universe so unfair to me? I'm just a diamond in the rough waiting to be discovered. It's like, no one's going to discover you. Like you actually have to go out and join Toastmasters, join groups, be proactive. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I do. My problem with it was if when I was early sort of recovery was I was so frightened. Like I
mm,
knew that stuff was the key, but what I did, I went too far too soon. Like I decided to do a presentation workshop. It
oh, wow.
basically like literally like I didn't know this. It's like right, we've all got to get on the stage and give a presentation, and that's when I had like a huge panic attack, and it set me back. And then I
Yeah.
realized I think it's a triangle, right? Well, it is for me. I realized that I'm going to have to try and change this narrative because my narrative is constantly nobody likes you, you're a loser. It's always a loser, which how like you're a loser. Like what is that?
Yeah.
Is a diss? Like it could be worse than that, but it's always you're a loser, you're one of life's losers and you
Mm,
make other people uncomfortable. So me going into these situations, I was just like that was never mind other people thinking it about me. I was thinking that about me. So I was like, I'm gonna have to try change this narrative. And
yeah.
then but that is the when I work with people, that's the part they never want to hear. They're fine with the let's try and change the narrative at home alone, safe. But you do,
Yeah.
like you say, you've got to go out there and apply it because what cures this disorder is people
Yeah.
and
Yeah. The cure is
practice.
in the poison, right? You got,
So I think you were braver than me in early recovery. I would have been like, I'll just stay here and wait for someone to knock on. But what happened ultimately? I had a nervous breakdown in front of the entire office, and then there was no
really.
hiding it anymore. No, it was like,
Oh, doing the presentation.
no. This was a couple of weeks after that presentation. That should have been the warning sign. I was like, no, no, no. I'm sure it's this whatever is going on in my head. I didn't know what was really going on. I'm sure it'll sort itself
Yeah.
out. I'll just suppress it.
Yeah.
I
Just grit your teeth
really,
and get through it.
well, I used to do all kinds of crazy shit. I would write down conversations, like prompts and things to say, like a script, so that I could go into a meeting and act normal. I'd
Right.
practice how I was going to smile. I mean, none of these things are bad if you use them within sort of safe context. Mine was to the extreme, like, and this is
Yeah, right. Meticulous planning.
to be human. And then I remember being sat in this meeting room and I had what I now know is a panic attack. It was, I have never to date been that frightened because
Really.
it wasn't just people when they say panic attacks, they say, oh, heart palpitations and I was a bit breathless. It was, no, 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 no. My limbs felt like they weighed 5 times the amount and my tongue felt like it's swollen up. And my heart was beating so hard, you could see it.
Yeah.
And my eyes started going blurry, like I was like, I can't see. And I couldn't breathe. I couldn't get anything. So I tell this joke because bear in mind, I thought I was having a stroke. That's what I thought it was.
Right.
But I've got social anxiety, mate. I don't want to cause a scene. So
Right.
yeah, literally, my arm could have been hanging off, and I've been like, "Oh my god, I'm very sorry."
Just
I
don't look at me.
thought, and there's about 20 people in this room. I thought the best way to get out of this normally was to stand up. Someone was talking at the time, and bear in mind, I've got this accent, right? And I stood up and said, "I'm so sorry, but I have the neurovirus, and I must leave at once." And then legged it out of the room,
Is that
and it
because
was
you
oh.
is that 'cause you were working in London that you chose that accent?
Yeah, and it was a glass room. So when I ran out, everyone could see me like, oh God. It was like, and a mate texted me afterwards saying, what the fuck? Like, did you just do?
Really?
It was the most excruciating and yet the best thing that's ever happened to me.
Yeah, it's like, once you've whipped your trousers, once you got naked, then it's like, okay, you've seen me naked now. There's nothing more to like worry about. It's done.
Because all that fear of people, in my head, I was like, people think I'm weird, they think I'm crazy. Then it was like, yeah, yeah, they do.
Now they know I'm crazy. But the thing is,
Yeah.
that's the thing as well. They're probably very supportive, and it's not crazy at all, is it? It's like, okay, at least, but that pressure of, this is what I talk to, clients on calls about, that pressure that you put on yourself to, it's not like you have to go and tell people your problem, but even internally, just give yourself permission that you don't have to try and present in some kind of a way. Like, does that make sense?
Totally, because we've pioneered that, and like I say, that's been the forefront of our friendship is radical honesty. It's very, I'm like, don't for a second think you have to sit in front of me and be like, I have to like not say that. I mean, as long as it's not something like, Claire, I want to cut your head off, I might be a bit okay. But
yeah, I think you'd be able to hold that.
It would be like, we've done it loads of times when I'm like, I don't know, something's off today, or I feel really like I've upset you, or I feel like we've done this, and it's like,
yeah, right, I know, amazing, right? Or like, yeah, I remember you saying, are you not messaging me because I'm a hassle to you? And I was like, no, I thought I was bothering you, so I've not been so responsive, or some stuff like, just being very honest about stuff. And you don't have to go into the office and tell everyone you got social anxiety necessarily, but you can do it to yourself and just be like, it's fine that I'm working on this right now, and I don't have to feel a need to be ashamed. Your permission to yourself to own whatever's going on with you, rather than be like, oh, I'm some sort of a defect.
I do it in a way where I say, if I'm going to meet someone, like a friend or someone I'm going to work with, like an editor or something, and if I feel it coming on, everything in me is telling me, like, just suppress that, like, just suck it up. It's only going to be half an hour, then you'll find. But I won't abandon myself like that anymore. I've abandoned her for years.
That's nice.
Like,
that's an amazing way to put it.
Punished her and abandoned her, and I make a point of sitting down and saying, sorry if I'm a bit jittery, the old programming started up. I'll be fine in 5 minutes. Just feel a bit anxious, a bit off, and takes the sting out of it.
So amazing. That's the thing, isn't it? Like, that's the level of authenticity that, not just for talking about anxiety, just for how you are in real life. It's the pressure of presenting a facade that is so draining. And I think it drains everybody in all walks of life when, how are you doing? Oh yeah, I'm great. And then you just sit there and
Yeah.
talk crap and then leave. You're like, God, I've got so many problems I wish I could share with someone.
Yeah.
So
And
that's, that authentic.
do you have this? I used to have this fear that if I talked about it, the person would then think I was incapable of doing my job or incapable of being any, like I thought if as soon as I talk about this, that's my identity. Done. They won't think I'm a good writer anymore, a good editor,
Yeah, I never actually, this is an interesting question, isn't it? Because I actually never brought it up at work. I used to, as you know, I used to work in the embassy in Beijing, and I never wanted to. I was on medication at that time because I was barely holding it together. I was on propranolol, beta blocker, and Zoloft, that SSRI. But I never wanted to draw attention to it because I always felt that it would actually exacerbate it. And, I understand that. I talk to clients about that and they're like, well, I don't want to actually name it in the workplace because then I feel like that's going to draw more attention to it. And so I understand that position at work, but I feel like around other people, it's way better just to be more open about stuff generally, whether it's anxiety or just how you're feeling or whatever,
Yeah, I definitely take it for granted because it in many ways is my identity now, proudly. I write about it, I talk about it. But
Yeah.
when I went back I used to work at big publishing house where I'd had that incident.
Right.
They were kind, they ticked all the HR boxes of support, but it wasn't the same again. It
Was it
was
not?
no. I mean, this was 2013, but I don't know when clients or people would ask, is it safe to talk about at work? I'm like, I can't answer that because you need to gauge what kind of support you think you might get if they're mental health. You can't, discrimination out. You can't be let go because you have a mental health condition. But it is a tricky one. So I really understand the whole not wanting to out yourself or exacerbate it.
Yeah. Yeah, and for me, it was always a confidence thing. I even had it like when I was having tennis lessons and stuff. As long as the coach had belief in me, then I would be able to play better. As soon as I felt that he was getting down, losing faith in me, then I would sink to his level of expectation. I think I felt that at work. Like if I was to actually say, although they could probably see pretty clearly that I was extremely nervous. But that's the other thing as well, is I don't think people can ever understand what it's like internally. So even if you have a colleague at work or something, you can see they struggle a little bit. You would think, oh, they're just a bit uncomfortable in meetings, but actually to them, they probably feel like they're having full on panic attacks, whatever, like extreme.
And it looks rude. Like you look hostile. You come across as like some people would say to me in the past, God, I thought you were a really stuck up bitch. I was like, no, I was just dying inside, kind of closing myself off, like head down. Conversations in the kitchen for like, I would time them. That's how bad it got. I'd be like, someone's come in the kitchen. Shit. Work. Right, you're nearly done with this. Have a conversation. 30 seconds. Right, go. It was a kind of, I was eager to get it done, to get it finished. So people had no idea and thought I was just being rude and walking off because I wasn't interested, when actually I was worried that I was going to fail the conversation if I carried on.
Right, damage limitation, pull the ripcord, eject as quickly as you can before you say anything that's going to look silly or weird or whatever.
Have you ever watched It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia? Have you ever seen that show?
Yeah.
When they're on a date and he's like, I'm going to blow this whistle when you make a mistake and we'll end the date. Like that was me. So she's like, whoop, out of here. You're done.
That's like the metaphor, isn't it? Yeah, and it's a real shame because you live your life in a state of panic, like all the time. And in panicking conversations. And it's, I think, one of the greatest gifts I've given myself over the last, 10 years or whatever is like, wow, you can just slow everything down and you can actually just be like, hey, how's it going? Yeah, it's okay. Not bad. How are you? And have these weird, like funny, frivolous, unscripted, unplanned little encounters with people in the elevator or in the shop or on the street and just in a coffee shop and be like, oh, hey, where are you from? Oh, yeah. Oh, nice. Which is like, wow, I could never do that before because I was raised to be very performative and be like, oh, hello, yes, and, jumping around like a little puppet. And it's like,
In that
wow,
voice.
it's like so, exactly, yeah. No, not, I'm Edward Barton, which is why I got bullied at school. No, but, you know what I mean, though? It's like, it's really like a whole different mode of being and just like so nice. So nice. I mean, I remember like filling up my car for the first time at Tesco's with petrol. And, I was like a year after getting over it, I was like 33 or something, 34. And just like looking around the forecourt and just being like, wow, this is so nice. I can fill up my car and not be like shit scared of these cars behind me thinking they're all judging me and I'm taking too long to fill up my car and stuff. I was like, you can get so much joy out of life when you've had social anxiety because the little things are such a pleasure.
I love that. And for me, was how I worked really hard and it landed is I am separate from people. I am not, I can go into this shop and chat to someone and they're rude to me or they're not quite what I would want, and that has no reflection on me and who I am, which sounds really simple, but it's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
You think, oh, I was counting on that interaction going well to give me a boost and it hasn't. So now, I'm a piece of shit. Whereas it's sort of, it really had to come from me because, it sounds so naff, but it's true. The core relationship you have is with yourself. It really is.
So it's the key to fucking life. I don't care how trite it sounds. Like it's absolutely the core to everything. That what you said there made me think about how the fact that I think both of us weren't really allowed our own private inner worlds as kids. I from what I know a little bit about what you said before, there was like an expectation that one of your parents would sort of have access to you in a way. Like, is that fair to say?
Yeah, as in what, trying to shape who I was going to be or my thoughts?
Like exactly, like having an inappropriate level of sort of access to your inner world. And
my dad is a very successful man. He's very successful and he came from nothing. So it makes me nervous just talking about him. He's not going to listen to this. It's fine. He's like,
no.
He then decided that that's the mode of success for life, and this is what his children need to be. So I was the oldest, and I knew very early on that I wasn't what he wanted. He's on his door. He loves me, but I was like, oh dear, I'm not particularly extrovert. I'm not bullish or very confident. I love reading. I love just small conversations. I don't really want to go to a family party and do a dance to show everyone, so from a very early age, I just felt like I was failing, and that's so damaging for a kid to be like, this is what we want. We're not, who you are at your core is wrong. Just so you know, it's all wrong. We need to fix it.
Yeah.
That was the message I got.
Yeah. And for me, it was like I was expected to be an open book and I didn't think that I had any right to a private inner world. And I see this a lot with guys that I speak to who come to me for help with blushing, because I think they get very embarrassed because they might think something, whether it's sexual or I don't like the look of this person, and they don't give themselves permission to realize like you can have whatever thoughts you want. You're entitled to your own inner beliefs and your own thoughts. And you don't have to portray that through your blushing to someone's face. It's almost like a confession. Like they will give everything away. And I felt I gave everything away, and I felt like people could come right sort of into me and see into me. And I had to be an open book to them. And it's a bit of a tangent, but I think it's important because it's a boundary issue, right? And I think if you have strong boundaries, you're like, no, I'm my own. Like, the reason I bring this up is because you said you're separate from the world, whereas when you have very weak boundaries and this leads to social anxiety, you feel like you take in everything from everybody else. They can see
Mm.
everything about you, see all your flaws, see all your nervousness, judge you.
Yeah.
It's like you're not. You are still your own, although everything's interconnected, you're still your own discrete, container. You're allowed to think what you want. You're allowed to feel what you want. People can't see that. People can't know that. Whereas people with social anxiety think that everything is being seen and that everything passes in and out very easily. And I think this is why we can talk endlessly about this, because it's so fascinating, because social anxiety is not just social anxiety. It's lack of assertiveness. It's overly porous boundaries. It's a weak sense of self. It's all of those things that contribute to it. Do you know what I mean? And social anxiety is a very flimsy little placard that I think we try to put on a huge whole being issue. And it doesn't cover it at all.
Completely agree. And I also think, to add to that, is social anxiety is all those other factors. You overstress your nervous system, or your amygdala, which is in charge of your fight and flight, so much from all this stuff that makes you uncomfortable, that you start associating people as dangerous. You don't feel safe. I didn't feel safe in my own family. I used to spend a lot of time in my room because it was just so stressful to be around my own family. I would just go in my room. And I see it a lot where people, particularly groups of people, are danger to people with social anxiety, because they know they're going to have to perform, and they know they're going to have to, these boundaries are going to come down, or they're going to get pushed around, or they just don't feel comfortable, or the physical, like of course you would start associating people with the problem, even though we desperately want to connect. I think that's what's so cruel about it.
Yeah. And you have enough bad experiences that it only takes a bit of eye contact, or someone look at you and you flinch when you see people, or you can develop a whole range of weird behaviors. Like if someone's passing you on the pavement, you might, I remember I was in Camberwell in London. I was like having a really high anxiety day, because London would make me more anxious anyway, generally in those days, because there's lots of people. And I couldn't look at people. When I was 27, I had an actual psychiatrist who used to just walk me around the town near where I lived and would give me instructions on how to walk, because I'd let this problem fester so much that I started to develop all these intricate little neuroses and weird habits and tics around it. Like I would look down at the ground, just weird, almost like tickish type stuff. I'd flinch if people looked at me, and then the blushing, and then the sweating. And then, so this is why I would say to anybody listening to or watching this, it's really important to get it sorted out early, because it is like a bit of a festering wound that if you leave it, it gets worse and worse. And you can start, the mind is so, creative and intricate. It can start to create all these different layers of other issues. You might have had one core problem, like someone gave me a strange look and I didn't like it. And then if left unaddressed, that starts to blossom and bloom into this whole weird ecosystem of issues you have around people looking at you, and then your eyes start to flick, and then you develop a tic where your eyes flick, and then you can't even look at paintings of people with eyes. And, like that's how it goes. Like that's how I've, seen it with people that I've worked with and stuff, because I know how the mind works. And it can, if once it has a string to pull on, it starts to have more and more fun. You know what I mean? It starts to create.
Mine is, it's interesting. You just reminded me of one of my own then. It's funny how when stuff comes back to you. Mine is sitting still, which sounds like it's an ADHD thing, which could be. But sitting still means I'm stuck. It means, oh no, there's some kind of interaction is going to happen here. I don't have the freedom to move. I can't dispel any of this energy. I can't get away if I need to. It's a sort of, you're stuck here now. So I started associating, particularly if you sat across from someone.
Yeah.
That was excruciating for me. Like, oh no, I now and then what you say about eye contact, and it wasn't even just the interaction anymore. It was the thought of having to sit in that way. And you're like, it really is important to start. It's not like, some people will come to me and say, is it too late for me? Like, no.
It's never too late, is it? It's never too late. I think it's really sad when I see comments in the YouTube channel from people in their 50s and 60s going, well, I've just given up now. I was like, I mean, I'm sorry, but that's actually on you. Like, it's never too late
Yeah,
to change
never.
any stuff, you know? So, but it's very good to get it handled as quickly as possible. I noticed, I was just going to say, sitting opposite each other, that the tube in London is the classic for
Oh
that. That
God.
used to give me a massive amount of panic when I was younger, just sitting on the tube in London, dead opposite somebody. I was like,
You know, like when you
this is the
catch their
worst.
eye more than once, and you're like, oh no, did they think, like, you look up again, you're, oh God, we're looking, right, what do I do here? Like, I don't look right. So it would be, they're going to think I fancy them, or like I'm just being weird, or,
Yeah.
oh God, yeah, the tube was really bad
And
for it.
it's not even staggered. It's like dead opposite. And
Yeah.
you're 100 feet underground in a little sardine can, it's like nowhere to go. But I've noticed we're nearly at the top of the hour. Shall we wrap it up pretty soon?
Let's wrap it up, eh? Let's,
Awesome chatting to you. I'll
yeah,
see
you
you
too.
same time next week.
Right, you are.
Okay. Cheers, mate. Bye.